I'm trying to see for the sake of the show, can I be a little more interesting? But I can't. I'm sorry. It has to be this man right here. It has to be Park Ji-sung. I'm sorry.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Media Derby. Today we've got a very special guest, someone that's a bit of an innovator, a bit of a trailblazer for, I don't know if it's to say Asian or just like American Asian, Asian American, British Asian. We're so the big Asian family, just not seen too many Asian football fan media influencers around, and he's one of the first I remember. So yeah, we've got John Shin on, GoodVibesJohn. So welcome to the podcast, John. How you doing, mate?
Thank you for having me. And with respect to your point regarding Asia or America, it's whoever claims me. You know what I mean? if Asia wants me to rep them, and I'll be more than happy. But if America says that's our guy, then it's cool too.
We'll let them do the racial draft, the Dave Chappelle skit.
Yeah,
we'll let them do it. Yeah. We'll let them do it for you. But before we kick off with the pod, we'll just do the general call out that we always do. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. We're obviously really small, just growing, so any kind of engagement is super appreciated. Subscribe, like the video, share if you can, comment down below. Me and John's are pretty active, going back and forth with people on the social channels. So yeah, don't feel afraid to get involved on the pod. And for those listening on any of the audio platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review or any review. If you think the pod sucks, we also appreciate those reviews as well. And yeah, let's get into the pod. So John, before we find out a bit more about you, because I feel like you've definitely got a super interesting story that we want to get into, let's go over probably a bit of pain, really, if we start talking about United. But I just wanted to get your point of view on what you've made of our season so far and whether you think we have any hope, really, going into the rest of the season now that the last international break's kind of going to be wrapped up. What have you made of it so far?
I think from a thematic perspective, I think it's been relatively positive, whether people believe it or not, whether they're like, this guy's, his name's Good Vibes John. No, for real, I've always been relatively positive and optimistic about my viewpoints. And don't get me wrong, this season has probably started in the worst way possible. But I'll start off this by saying that I still am positive because I truly believe that the injuries have plagued this season. I think people seem to sort of undermine what happens to a team when you lose key players. I mean, I don't even need to go back dozens of years. We can look back last year. Arsenal were flying, and then they lost William Saliba for a minute, and then they just started shaking up a little bit. You know what I mean? William Saliba is one player, but he's that important and that critical to how they play. You look back a few years ago, Liverpool, they were flying, and then they lost Van Dijk for a bit, and they started shaking up. You know what I mean? Manchester United don't have a Saliba or Van Dijk player for the lack of, I'm not trying to argue who's on Van Dijk world class level. That's my point is when you have important players in a system and they go missing for an X amount of time, it really affects how a manager wants to play his style. One of the reasons why you have a starting 11 or maybe 14, 15 players that can really fight for a starting 11 place, and then you have the rest. There's a real difference why the players are the rest and they're not playing in the starting 11. The people that are on the considered the rest is because maybe if you have a full 8 or 9 and you just need 1 or 2 to come in and deputize, then they can potentially do a job in the system, right? That's why they're squad players. Manchester United have had a plethora of injuries. I mean, somebody was tweeting me. I was talking to a content creator yesterday. I was at a event out in Manhattan. And they were talking about Real Madrid and how like Camavinga's going to be out for a while. And, they were losing a couple players. I was like, are you mad? Manchester United, we've had what? I think we've had close to 19 injuries. Most of them reoccurred injuries. We've lost 2 players for an X amount of time for unrelated reasons unrelated to injury. Like the amount of things that have been bad has been bad. But I think the start to the season is pretty. It is what it is. We can't do anything about it. I think it just made it even worse. I think it compounded to the fact that Manchester United were Manchester United. We're always taking headlines and front pages for all these other things. But overall, I'm still relatively confident because despite this shaky start, despite this lacking system, despite all of this negativity, I think Manchester United will bounce back once the important players return. I think once we get that full system back in running, I think we will really, really see a much, much more rejuvenated side. And the season's long. It's only November. We still have lots of games to go.
Yeah, we're only a third in. I understand why people are going big, and like you said, John, I totally agree. Everyone's looking for a United story. So if we were flying, they'll try and find and dig something up as well to just try and keep the news columns flowing. But so I just wanted to ask you around, because the injuries I think is undeniable, right? But people are always going to go, "Oh, get the violins out," because generally, whenever injuries is used as an excuse, people don't really accept it, or at least not for United. It seems like, if you're Chelsea or you're Tottenham, people are giving those guys a bit more time. Don't know if it's because people love their managers a bit more. But there's a lot of kind of blame being put on Ten Hag's door. Do you not buy into any of that? Because myself as a United fan, I'm a big Ten Hag fan. So I'm trying to bat all my friends away who are rival fans trying to talk about Ten Hag. But at some point, we do have to look at some of the decisions surely as a bit sketchy, right? I think of the Eriksen sub against City in the second half, where kind of all fell to pieces after that. So do you put any blame on his door? And if so, is it like actually worrying, or is it just something that we have to ride out?
I am 1000% Ten Hag in, and I think he's very wrongly criticized for a multitude of reasons. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say he's completely devoid of all criticism. I'm not sitting here, with my eyes covered like, hey, I don't want to hear. No, I'm not doing that. But what I am saying is that, yes, while some decisions might be a bit suspect, I think some of them, for me, mostly, respectfully speaking, are wrongly criticized. Like, for example, I forgot which match it was against, but Rasmus Højlund had to be taken off, and then the crowd went nuts. They were like booing him, like, why would you take off Rasmus? He's our only striker. People don't seem to understand that this boy is 20 years old, and this is where I got to control myself because I'm going to start swearing. He's been wrestling the men, like full-grown men on that pitch for like 70-odd minutes. I don't think anybody has ever tussled with a full-grown man for 5 minutes. You get gassed when you do it for 2 minutes. This boy was doing it for an entire match, and people expect him to stay on. That's not how it works. That's not how football works. Just because he's got 85 rating on a FIFA card and he's got ST on top doesn't mean he's going to give you the only goal option. The man's legs were done. And when you need to take him out because he was completely gassed, you can't boo and criticize Erik ten Hag by saying, wait, what? He's your like best attacking option. You're going to take him off? He can't run. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if Michael Jordan is playing basketball in his prime. If he don't got legs, he can't run. You know what I'm saying? Like, Erasmus was done. Those are the kind of decisions where I feel like he's a little bit wronged for. But you mentioned the one against Christian Eriksen. I thought that was a little bit suspect as well. I'm not going to completely say he's devoid of all criticisms. But like I said, going back to my the point that I made earlier, imagine you're Erik ten Hag. Imagine you had this squad that was flying last season. They were playing the system you wanted to play. And all of a sudden, you guys go on a preseason tour. You go all over the place. You guys are absolutely gassed before you even start the season. And you come back to Premier League, and all of a sudden, people are dropping like flies. I feel for him. So look, nobody's devoid of any. Everybody has a part to play. Erik ten Hag, even the janitors, even the groundskeepers, even the chefs. Everybody has a part to play in a club's success and in a club's demise. Everybody has a role to play. So I'm not going to say Erik ten Hag's devoid of any criticism, but I think some of them is a bit unfair.
So, I mean, with all of that said, I'm assuming you're optimistic about the rest of the season then, yeah?
Yeah, look, okay, I'm not going to sit here like an absolute just, you know what I mean? I'm not going to do that. But I am optimistic that Manchester United will still finish relatively strong. I mean, people were right. People were, I think when we were like ninth or something a couple weeks ago, people were like, there's no way Man United are going to make top 4, let alone top 6, and it's just going to be ridiculous. I'm not sitting here saying Man United are going to challenge for the title. That's not the kind of blind
Don't do it, John.
ridiculousness.
Don't do it.
Exactly. But what I am saying is that Manchester United should be able to challenge for the top 4. I'm not going to say comfortably, but they should be able to challenge and give a pretty good fight. And for me, that's a good enough season considering how it started.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I think people I'm not gonna lie, it was looking real bleak a couple of weeks ago, and we've the most informed team in the Premier League. We've seen all of those stats going around social media and stuff, even though the matches haven't been the most convincing. But it's definitely just shown that this Premier League's going to be tight, man. maybe the top 3 teams, including Arsenal, Johnson's happy about that, are probably primed for a title challenge. But the rest are just all battling. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't get fourth, or at least in the top 6. I think that was my expectation when we saw things going a little bit awry and the performances weren't looking great. I thought if we could just get top 6, we've still got a shot at top 4. If we can get back in that top 6 mix, which we basically are already, I think we can do it. The only question I think I want to left to ask you on United is around our Champions League situation, because boy, that's the one that's really got me, in it, because that Champions League group is not looking good right now. Do you think we've still got a chance of getting out, or do you think let's piece it up, just finish 4th and concentrate on the other competitions? What's your view?
I don't like the conversation of let's drop this and forget about it and just focus on the rest, because I think you have to fight until your last breath. You got to fight.
Yeah.
If you're given the chance, you got to do it. That being said, I think Manchester United's Champions League campaign is pretty much done. I think we've made too many mistakes earlier on with the games that we should have won, with the games that there were moments like against Copenhagen, like against Galatasaray, where we should have secured 3 points and we just simply did not. Well, for whatever reason, which I don't want to get into, it's just going to take forever, we didn't. I think to try and get a result against Bayern Munich and against Galatasaray, especially, I believe we have Galatasaray at home, right? At their home. It's going to be really, really tough. Just the idea of, I watch Bayern Munich a lot more this season, apart from watching Manchester United and other sort of one-off football matches. I think last season I spent a lot of time watching Arsenal, but this season I've been spending a lot more time watching Bayern Munich because, of course, as much as I am a Manchester United fan, I also follow Korean footballers. And Kim Min-jae, who was supposed to come to us, broke my heart, went to Bayern Munich. I've been watching him. The amount of games and influence that he has on that side is insane. Of course, if you think I sound biased, that's completely fine. You go watch him. You go watch him, and you determine it yourself.
Just watch right now Upamecano defend, and then you'll understand why you need Kim Min-jae next to him. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the insane point, is that Tuchel relies on Kim Min-jae so much to try and get the best out of both Kim Min-jae and Upamecano. And it works. Like, they play phenomenally. And Kim Min-jae, his ball retention rate as a center back is insane. Like, this brother's on like midfielder numbers. Like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? And like that kind of cruise control from the back is already just goes to show you how great they are from a systematic perspective, from a balance level. They have players on each thirds that they can rely on. I don't know if Manchester United are going to be able to. When they came to Old Trafford. When they was the first game at Old Trafford? I can't even remember.
No, it was in Munich. Yeah, we
lost
4-3. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, that's right. Because I remember I made a video confronting Bastian Schweinsteiger. But anyway, like, even when we played them at their home, it was just like, I don't even think they got out of second gear. Like, they were just like, of course we could score some goals, but it wasn't that scary. You know what I mean? Because I think they weren't really that. I'm not gonna say they weren't taking it seriously, because that's ridiculous, but. It didn't seem like they were really playing at their fullest potential. And I'm worried that if they are at their fullest potential, especially with Harry Kane doing these ungodly things that he's doing right now, I just think Manchester United, with respect to Champions League, I think it's pretty much done. I'm not going to say give up now. I'll never say never, but it's looking really bleak.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I completely agree. I'm just holding out false hope that it's that Galatasaray game more than anything that scares me, because they've actually still got skin in the game. Mm-hmm. And if we manage to win that, I actually will be a lot more confident that we can get out, because there's no way Bayern aren't going to beat Copenhagen in the next game to wrap up first place. And if they do, they might just put out the Rezzies in the last game. And if they do that, and we've got loads on the line, I know I'm really, really clutching at straws here, but that's the only hope I have. Like, I don't think we'll play a full strength Bayern in that last game. It's just whether or not we actually have a chance to still get through, which I'm not confident of, going away to Galatasaray and getting a win. So, yeah, and that's what we need. So let's move on to your thoughts quickly on Arsenal. We'll keep this short and sweet, because I guess you're just going to say they're great. But what have you made of their start to the season?
So I forgot which channel I went on. I went on one of those channels early on in the season for like season predictions, and I actually had Arsenal winning, and people were calling me.
Yeah, so did I, bro. So did I.
People were like, "You absolute blah, blah, blah." They were going off on me.
Lads.
And the reason why I said Arsenal were going to win was kind of similar to what sort of Gary Neville has been saying recently. He said that he picks Arsenal to win because he says they have no excuses but to win. I'm not going to go that far because I think that's more like, a Gary Neville versus Arsenal thing. But I think that Arsenal, I looked at two teams. I looked at Arsenal and Manchester City, those two teams in particular. And I said that Manchester City, we're going to go through a phase now where they're going to have to transition some key players. And they have been. They have been. And they were even at that point when I made that prediction, I think they were even talking about almost potentially losing Kyle Walker. They were also potentially talking about almost losing Bernardo Silva. Like the players that they, at the moment, I thought they were going to lose was going to be enough for them to have to shake things up and recalibrate. And I thought that Arsenal, from a recalibration perspective, probably needs to do the least of that. I think they were ready to go, just, kicking things off from last season. And I also said that this season was going to be the toughest season we've seen in a while. I was going to say that the competition was going to be so fierce. I name dropped Aston Villa, Brighton, and I said that those teams are going to be also a bit of a menace. And I also talked about West Ham. Also, they haven't been flying this season. But I did say that the competition was going to be fiercer than ever before, and that it was almost going to be a tale of two cities, if you will, from a points perspective of the top teams that perform, and then the gap between the top and then the lower teams. I was going to say that was going to be a lot more of a stark contrast. But going back to Arsenal, I just feel like it's nothing shocking to me. I think as much as people want to badmouth Arsenal and say, oh, Mikel Arteta this, blah, 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 they have been playing great football. If you watch how they play great football consistently. And I think this season, they're just carrying on from what they've been doing last season. It's all about momentum. Once we get past that December, January phase of the rush of games, that's when you're going to really go, okay, maybe this team's going to be serious. I still tip them to win the league over Man City.
Big shout. I think I had them close. I think I still had City winning, but I was like, Jonty was a little bit more pessimistic. I was like, I think Arsenal got a good shot.
I've been an Arsenal fan for too long to ever predict
he's been
that we're
hurt too much.
League, yeah. Yeah.
But no, I hear you, man. I actually think this season Arsenal, performance-wise, maybe haven't hit the heights of last season, but results-wise, they're right there. So if I was an Arsenal fan, which I'm obviously not, I would be really optimistic about your chances, man. Like there's 2 points between first and fourth, and 3 points between first and fifth. Like I think you're right, John. Your prediction's pretty much on the money. I predicted similar. I mean, I predicted Villa and Brighton to be right up in the mix, and I think Villa in particular look unbelievable. There was a lot of hype around Newcastle. If you ask Johns, he'll tell you that I'm a bit of a Newcastle hater.
He's the biggest Newcastle hater in the world. Yeah.
But yeah, the teams are close, man, and I think I think Arsenal are going to be there. I'm because of the Liverpool rivalry. I'm never going to give them their props, but they're also in the mix. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting. The second chunk of the season now, between December, January, and February, right up probably to the Carabao Cup final. I think it's going to be really key to who challenges who and who's going to win the title. But I think Arsenal are in there, man. I think
wait until City get KDB back, lads. We've completely forgotten that they haven't had KDB at all.
That's a good point.
I predicted that they'd be first, we'd be second, and the point difference would be large. And I was hoping that they wouldn't be that hungry this year because they won it all last year, basically. But if you get Doku just going absolutely nuts, and they get Foden and all of their other players performing, then we're in trouble, boys.
Yeah. I think there's been moments in the season where City have looked like that, but they've also lost to Wolves. They lost to Arsenal as well, and I don't think you guys had to play that well to beat them. So I think City are there.
Same thing happened last year, though. Just at the end of the season, they just went on an absolutely crazy run. And if they get KDB back, just putting things on a plate for Haaland, we're all in trouble.
No, we are. But I think you guys have a good shot, and I think you're like John said. I think you got a much stronger squad. Let you guys get a couple players back from injury, and then I think you guys are probably in the best position you've ever been to win the title. I think last season you had to play out of your skin to get that close and push City to the wire. I think this season, I think you can do it. I think let's see how it goes though. I still prefer Arsenal to win over City. So let's hope if we don't pull off an absolute miracle and somehow come out and win all our games and win the league, Arsenal are the next team to win it. But
Well, let's just hope that they get relegated, boys, because Everton 10 points down. So let's just hope those 115 charges come in clutch. Send them to the National League, lads.
Let him
let's
play
hope
Wrexham.
so. Yeah, exactly. To be honest, I really don't want them to play Wrexham because Wrexham are going to give them a little bit too much shine with all their documentaries and all that. But now let's crack on to the interview part then, John. Let's find out a bit more about you. So, like I said in the intro, man, I remember watching at the time I was living in China, so obviously I couldn't, even though we're based in London, every now and again we go up to Manchester and go and watch some United games. But when I was in China, I was watching Full Time Devils, and I remember seeing some of your segments, and you were like, quite a prominent part of that fan channel at the time. And I just remember saying, "Holy shit, there's an Asian dude that's talking about football on one of these fan channels." And up until then, and pretty much since then, I don't think I can remember any others, or if there are, there are very few. So you're definitely a bit of a trailblazer, man, when it comes to that. So yeah, I spoke to John early on when we started doing the podcast and said, John would be sick if we were able to get him on just to find out more about you, man, and about your story and how you got into it, and now you're kind of like John 2.0, I guess, coming back. Good vibes, John. So yeah, man, can you give us some like background? Like, I know obviously you're from the States, but like a little bit more background about like you and who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, so I was born in South Korea and I immigrated here to the States. I grew up doing everything but football. I grew up playing basketball, American football, swimming, golf. I literally did everything except play footy. And it was one of those things that I only watched because I didn't have basic cable, being an immigrant family in America, we live in a half basement, it was just packed with people, one of them things like, I don't need to explain. Like, it's just, it was watching footy was really hard. So I was sort of pretty much restricted to only watching South Korea games. For those that listening that might not know, South Korea had an incredible World Cup run in 2002. And, I remember since then I was just obsessed with watching South Korea football, but it was just a watching thing. It was never like playing and being fully obsessed with every aspect of football. I got into Manchester United after having watched, the Premier League casually and watching Manchester United, of course, through Park Ji-sung. I got into him like intensely towards maybe high school, towards college in particular. That was when it was a wrap. I lived, breathed, ate. Everything was about Manchester United. I mean, if my parents are listening, just don't listen, because I think a lot of my college tuition back then went to Manchester United games. It was that much. Like, I would literally, allegedly, skip classes to watch Manchester United games in my dorm. I would sit there and I would just watch Man United games, and some of my roommates would come and be like, "Yo, aren't you supposed to go to class?" I'm like, "Yo, close the door. Shut up. Stop." And it used to be that serious. But yeah, that's where I really, really started getting obsessed into Manchester United and football as just the world of football. It's a beautiful game. And I think, just to talk about Manchester United now, like in this platform, and for people to listen to me is of course incredible. But it all started around then when, I remember uploading some video. I think it was David Moyes. I think the first video I uploaded, I think we just got knocked out of the Champions League. I think we got stomped by Bayern or something like that. I think, and I was livid. And mind you, I've only been in football back then, probably around like 10 years, whatever. But seriously, being into football, maybe a couple years. And I was just waffling. I just hit the record on my webcam. I was like, "David Moyes, you absolute." And this was like back then when I had there was no class behind it. And there was no this idea of like, I'm an American. I grew up in, I had to move around a lot of places in New York. So I lived in some rough areas and whatever. I have this like New Yorker in me. So I remember that first video. I was like, "David Moyes, you son of a, what the like, it was like New York coming out." And I remember recording that and I got roasted. And people were like, "Shut up, you yank," like blah, blah, blah. And I was the racial abuse, all of it was insane. And I looked at it, I go, "Damn, this is crazy." I mean, I was shocked and I was hurt, but I was like, wow, people actually do watch my stuff. So I just started uploading, and lo and behold, it was just a whole wave of steps that I went through to eventually get on Full Time Devils. But yeah.
That's sick, man. And that, I think that's leading into the next question then, I guess, like how did you get into Full Time Devils? Because I know it's obviously now Stretford Paddock or whatever, but
Mhm.
like it was the main big prominent United fan channel at the time, and probably still
Mhm.
is. So how did you get involved, especially being someone international? When I'm guessing a lot of the people that were involved were local or UK based. How did that come about?
Oh, this is funny. I actually talked. I was actually talking to some content creators yesterday, and they asked me the exact same question. I guess I had practice, but so yesterday, so Full Time Devils back then, they mostly ran their videos in a small studio via Skype. So it was a lot of Skype videos. Shout out Skype. Um, I used to upload guest videos for another channel called Mr. Flying Pig HC. Shout out Joe. He was also a Full Time Devils contributor at the time, but on a minor scale. And I always used to think I want to get on Full Time Devils, but how do I get on Full Time Devils? They're not gonna let an American kid who just screams all the time get on Full Time Devils. So how do I get myself to that? So I was like, let's start small. Let's see if I can collaborate with other creators. So that's when I reached out to Flying Pig, and he allowed me to upload on his channel. He had like, I want to say like 2,000 subscribers at the time or something like that. And I had like 5 or something. So I was like, oh, that's great. That's better than me. So I just started talking with him at first. And then I think like a 2-year spell, maybe a year or two, I can't remember the exact, it's been so long, but I just started building experience and building repertoire. And eventually around I want to say 2016, around that time frame, Full Time Devils had merged with a lot of these other fan channels in that era. I think there was a Blue Moon Rising. There was like another Chelsea fan channel, and there was another Arsenal. I don't know. I can't remember if Arsenal Fan TV was involved, but there was a lot of other channels, fan channels for all these other clubs that had merged into what was called the Football Republic. And it was run by a media company. It was a really big organized thing with like an actual studio and producers. They were serious business. And with a partnership with Skype, they released this competition called the Skype Pundit Pursuit. So for each club, they wanted to bring on like a guest contributor who was going to be like a panelist basically. And instead of the OG panel, like for Full Time Devils back then, they had Adam McCullough, Sam Homewood, all those guys, and every channel had their OG guys, but they wanted to bring in like a Skype guy. And I remember I was like, this is my chance. I gotta do something, but I couldn't. I didn't know how to approach it because I was like, this is my only chance. I better not blow this. And then after like I think after like a week of me just contemplating, I got upset and I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just gonna do me. So I remember taking my really rinky-dinky iPhone. If iPhone 4 was the latest phone back then, I had the iPhone 0.5. Like it was the worst iPhone like available. And I used to work at I don't know if you guys know where Rockefeller Center is, but I used to work in Midtown. And I remember I was just walking around during lunchtime, and I was like, screw it. And I grabbed my phone and I just went like this. And I was just like, my name is, and I just went off for like a minute. And I just sent it. I was like, this is my submission, whatever. And they loved it. And they were like, John, this is incredible. We'd love to hear more from you. Let's organize a thing. And that's where I started talking with Adam McCullough, and we sat down and we did like an interview video. And it was really funny because he still is a massive Anthony Martial fan. He will ride for that man. Like he will ride for Anthony Martial till the day he dies. I am a big Anthony Martial hater. And I remember first talking about it with them, and I remember like off camera, and he said something about Anthony Martial, and I was like, yeah, no way. I remember saying something, and then his face expression changed. I was like, oh, I'm done for. No way. But they love that, and that's how I really started. And then they started, getting me on a lot more of their videos. They asked me to come feature and hop on from time to time. Back then, they used to record 9:30, 10 a.m. UK time. That was 5 o'clock US time. So I would wake up at 4:30, shower just to snap and wake up like sharp, just try to get as sharp as possible, just drown a cup of coffee, chug a cup of water, and then I would start recording at 5 a.m, and then I would do the video at 6 o'clock. And by then I'm fully wired, adrenaline's pumping, all that stuff. So at 6 o'clock, I'm just walking around now doing something, and then I would just get ready for work. And then I remember I'd just be in the office, just doing this, dozing off. But that was the rinse and repeat. That was like how it really started for me.
No, that's sick, man. Yeah, I remember that time, and that time, I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit biased, but that moment of football, like fan media, was it was kind of like the grime period for like music here in the UK. It was like where
Mhm.
you had all the innovators and like all the people that were involved in that period of time are all now smashing it in their own different, properly legit places. Like, Stephen Howson on Five with Rio, and you're smashing it. A bunch of other guys are smashing it in different places. But yeah, it kind of was, that was where all the innovators started and then
Yep.
carried and moved on. And now you see what football fan media is now, and you see like mainstream media copying a lot of the, stealing the flow and stuff like that with a lot of the stuff that was created in the football fan media space. So that's really sick, man. But and the reason why, like, I guess this came about was because I saw one of your tweets talking about kind of you visiting Manchester in 2017 and kind of like a big period in your life. But I remember, like, I don't know if you've explained this on any other channel, but like, you were like heavy, like you said, into Full Time Devils, and then like suddenly I couldn't, like, I just didn't see much of you like online. Was there like, did you actually stop, or was I just not looking hard enough for your content? Like, what happened?
No, no, you're right. I did stop. I was Uh, that was around the time when I tweeted that out because 2017 was really a tough point in my life, and full time devils. Honestly, that trip will be with me till the day I die. It's something that it's very close to my heart. But it's not like one trip's gonna cure everything. You know what I mean? That's not how life
Yeah,
works. Unfortunately, as much as we would love for that to be the case, it's not. And for there was like a maybe a year stretch where I just stopped going on Full Time Devils. They Full Time Devils was also transitioning to this much more serious channel. It
yeah,
wasn't going from just doing YouTube videos and calling video calls to everything's going to be done in studio, in house production, sharp, scale up, top notch, everything. They wanted their content to be the best version possible, and they were doing a lot less of these, like, hey, let's call in and whatever, which is fine. Like I was never like, oh, what are they doing, leaving me out. I was actually glad that they were doing that, because I wanted them to grow. I wanted them to you know rise to this echelon of like YouTube. Yeah, you mentioned Godfather. I think Full Time Devils and Arsenal Fan TV. I mean, now they just call it AFTV, but it was called Arsenal Fan TV. Those two channels were the godfathers of
mm,
fan content. And as the years went on, people started catching on this thing like, oh wow, fan channel and fan media and fan content is incredible. So they started doing variations of that and whatever. And I'm not saying that's bad, but they were doing these things and they were growing at a much faster rate. And as a as a Full Time Devils family, they might not be bothered with it, but I was like, yo, I want to see y'all grow. I'm like that loyal dog. You know what I mean? Like
you got to ride or
I'm the
die.
one barking, and the owner's in the back, like, hey, relax, man. And I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to see them grow, and them telling me like, they want to do more in house and whatnot. That was perfect. That was perfectly fine for me, and it was perfect because I just felt like I needed to step away. So I think I spent a year where I completely disconnected from the world of football. Like I deactivated Twitter. I like unfollowed everything on Instagram. Like I think I deactivated Instagram for a while too, but I just completely disconnected from the world of football. And I thought it would make me feel better. And for a brief moment, it did. Like there was a brief spell where it did make me feel better, but I just couldn't get away from it. I needed to try and find my way back, and that was where I think I went through that transition period of trying to really figure out like, all right, what's best for me? Like what do I want out of this? And of course, I started taking content creating a lot more seriously in the past 2 years, but that I needed that transition, taking my step away from Full Time Devils, taking my step away from the world of football to just sort of like get my head together, take care of things unrelated to football and things like that.
No, man, that's to be honest, is heartwarming because that's another reason why I reached out. It was not only the the obvious stuff, seeing someone from your community doing stuff that you find really inspiring, but also the fact that it's real life, isn't it? And like real life gets in the way, and we all have our struggles and challenges and stuff. And the way you bounce back, man, I love it. That's why I said the like John 2.0, the good vibes, John. I love it, man, because I remember watching you in the John 1.0, and it was great to see you and how passionate you are about football then, and your approach now, even maybe a little bit more positive than back then, is still super super good, man. And growth is important, and it's important to see, you know, that people don't have just like a linear journey where everything goes perfectly and smoothly. There's bumps in the road, but you can get past it, man. So I guess the last kind of question of the John Shin interview part is, what does the future hold for you, man? Obviously, you talked about stuff that you're doing on your channel. You obviously contribute to other channels now. Is there any cool projects you want to talk about or things that you're working on that you can maybe shout out on this little portion?
Right now I'm just at a point where I'm just trying to collaborate as much as possible with people that I enjoy working with, you know, especially people that have supported me for a long time. You know, if there's anybody I should be grateful for, is the people that's been backing me since day one. For example, like the Stretford Paddock guys. Like, I would take bullets for them. Like, they are my guys. Like, those guys have been riding for me for a long time. And right now I'm at a point where I'm just collaborating. I'm just working with as many people. Like I mentioned the content creator thing yesterday. There was an event here in Manhattan with footy kits, and you know, a bunch of content creators showed up. We're just chatting with them, and they're all great folks. And I want to collaborate with people like that. I want to try and see if we can put New York City more on the map. You know, I think this whole idea of Americans and footy, I think it's changed a lot. And when I say a lot, I think it's changed a lot since when I first started doing content in 2010 or 2011. And we've come a long way, and I want to be at the forefront of that. I want people to understand that, you know, people like myself, people like other content creators who's been through this. Shout out Jimmy Conrad, Kick TV, all these people that's really helped to really engineer this movement here. You know, on our side of the country. It's just, I just want people to understand that, like, New York City is a beautiful place for football. The football culture here is incredible. You know, and the rest of the world has this idea that, like, oh, Americans, they call it soccer. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we call it soccer. Who cares? You know what I mean? It's the same sport. You know, it's just a different name. You know what I mean? I have two names. My American name is John, but my Korean name is Oak. My close friends call me Oak, but it ain't. But just because they call me Oak, it's not like I'm not John. You know what I mean? It's just a different word. And I think people, I want to help people try to, you know, push that aside and just look at the beautiful side of New York. And I just want to keep working towards that goal. And hopefully, you know, New York can be another hub, just like Manchester, just like London, just like everywhere else besides America. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I guess on the coaching side and the player side, I think there's still some stigmas. You saw how Jesse Marsh did when he was Leeds manager. There was a lot of unfair criticism and rubbish going around, you know, the Ted Lasso shouts and all that kind of rubbish. Even with I think was it Chris Armas, our like assistant manager
Thomas,
under
yeah.
Ralph.
Mr. AirPods.
Yeah, exactly. Under Ralph Ragnick, he used to get those shouts. So I think we've still got a lot of work to do to try and, you know, remove that kind of anti-American sentiment around football or soccer or whatever. Like, you know, football's football. It's a global game. People everywhere love it. Americans are allowed to love it, and they love it just as much as anywhere else. So you're right, man, 100%. And yeah, I would implore everyone to go follow John's channel, Good Vibes John. Also follow other channels that he's involved with. Obviously, he's involved with the United View as well, quite regularly at the moment as well. So go and check them out. They're obviously big fan channels. But before we wrap up this segment, John, we've got a question that we ask every guest that comes on the pod. Obviously, me and John's being of, you know, Asian heritage, Taiwan, you know, whatever. We want to try and highlight Asian players in football, because I feel like, you know, when we talk about different ethnic groups or communities, a lot of them get, you know, a lot of shine. But, you know, the East Asians, Southeast Asians are kind of one of those groups that we've had ballers, man, but I don't know if we've quite hit the mainstream when it comes to people's, you know, recognition and shine. So the question we want to ask is, who's your favorite Asian player of all time? I could probably guess who it's going to be, but
I think I can as well.
We're going to let you answer anyway.
Yeah. I'm trying to see, for the sake of the show, can I be a little more interesting? But I can't. I'm sorry. It has to be this man right here. It has to be Park Ji-sung. I'm sorry. It's just, he has influenced me. He has been such an important part of my life. And it's so crazy, isn't it? Like, this guy doesn't even know who I am. This guy just lives his life. And for me, he's been everything. Like, he's dragged me through such dark periods of my life, even as a young kid, you know? When you're 10, 15 years old, as a 30-plus-year-old looking at a 10-year-old kid who goes, "Oh, I'm stressed about life," you're like, "What the hell do you know about stress?" Right? But 10-year-olds have stress just as much as a 30-year-old has stress. And when I was a young kid, I went through a lot, emotionally, physically, all these things. And Park was a hero that I used to look up to so much. You know, I used to have this fear of being in a country where I was a minority, and I grew up in areas where I was literally the only Korean kid, so having to adjust, assimilate to all of these cultures and people and the way they used to hang out and all these things. Like, it was a massive challenge for me. And when you're a kid like that, who my personality, I see myself as pretty emotional. I see myself as somebody that, like, my friends tell me that I used to overthink a lot. When I was a young kid, like, these things used to impact me so heavily, and it used to traumatize me to some extent. But I used to look up to people like Park as my hero. He used to drive me. I remember I think I was in like 6th grade or something. This might sound like absolutely ridiculous now, but I remember I had a crush on this girl, and she was like, "I don't like fat kids." I was like, "Damn!" Like, that hurt me. I was extremely overweight. I was like morbidly obese in the BMI scale.
We've been there, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I got to do something about this. So I remember I used to watch clips of Park, and this was back in the YouTube days when 480p was like top notch, and I used to watch those clips, and I used to run in the park, and I used to just blast J-rock music and just like try to get motivation from players like Park Ji-sung, who rose above everything, from the ranks of from the Olympic team to the World Cup team to Kyoto Purple Sanga to PSV Eindhoven to Manchester United, of one of the greatest football clubs in the world, to play and be relied upon so heavily by one of the greatest managers in the world, like Sir Alex Ferguson. Like, that was such a motivating factor in my life. People might go, now, I think, look, I'm not trying to sound like an old fart, but I think kids nowadays don't relate like we used to back then. You know what I mean? Like, when I used to, like, I was looking at heroes, I wasn't looking through an iPad, I looked through a TV, and that was like my guy, Like, it was a different kind of connecting, and I think for me, Park was somebody that I relied on so much for those reasons. I think I'm almost like, my goal, funny enough, my goal is to meet Park Ji-sung. Like, one of the reasons why I continue to do this content thing is because I want to meet him. And I don't want to meet him as just like, oh my God, I'm a fan. I want to be there sort of almost kind of like a bit of on equal footings, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. I want to be there as a content creator or interviewer or presenter, working with him, not just being there, being like a fanboy, like, like, I want to be of value to him as much as he was of value to me. And hopefully I can get there. But that's how much he means to me in my life.
Man, that's awesome. Honestly, we've had some humdingers when it comes to this question. I'm not gonna lie, but from a connection point of view, I hear you, because watching football, me and Jonty were the same in England. There's obviously, there's an Asian population in London in particular, but in our particular area that we grew up, there weren't that many Asian kids. Certainly not many that were, interested in sport and in football. So when we saw Park Ji-sung, Inamoto, Nakamura, Nakata, all these guys on Football Italia, we used to have a show on Channel 4 here, which was massive when we were young. Seeing those guys play gave us, inspiration to get involved in football, play it, support it, watch it, just knowing that, people that look like us and our family and stuff were involved. And yeah, man, it's a beautiful story. And I'm sure one day it will happen for you, man, because you're absolutely killing it in the football fan media space. And I'm sure that will happen. So yeah, just want to wrap before we wrap it up, John. So you got any other questions?
Even me, as like an Arsenal fan, I'm not inclined to like any of your players. But I remember the run that you went on with PSV. I think they got to the semi-final of the Champions League. They went on a crazy run. I remember him, and I think it was Lee Pyong-yo went to Tottenham, and they basically, the two guys that I liked went to two teams that I hated. And then I just remember from that point on, basically anytime I would play football for either school or for like a Sunday league football team, everyone would just say Ji-sung Park, and they would just, and it almost came like a badge of honor for me that, like, I was going to be a hard worker, I was going to run around, I was going to have an engine, try my hardest to, get on the ball, not do anything flashy. And it kind of, similarly to you, it creates like a connection between me and him, even though he's a Man United player and I don't tend to like any of you guys. But it just created that connection to the point where now, like, when I even think about it, I don't even think about Inamoto. I try not to choose Ji-sung Park or Son for that matter, but like, I almost can't avoid picking Ji-sung Park because it created such a connection for me to football at that time. And so it's lovely to hear as well that, like, it was across the world, everywhere, everyone had like this, everyone that looked like us growing up had that connection to this player that was, as you said, right, we had to struggle to actually know more about these players. Like, we didn't get interviews with them like always on media. I just had to watch him in the Champions League, or I had to watch him in the Premier League, and never heard from him. No interviews, nothing. Just watching him play and kind of connecting to him. So it's great to hear that that's like a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and before I leave, I just want to include this bit here. I just want people to understand that, you know, things like racism, things like ignorance, all of these things, nothing changed. It remains a universal problem throughout any generation, and I'm sure there's still young kids now watching players like Sonny being called Sonny, you know, in schools, you know, watching kids like this, you know, getting in these kinds of troubles, and I hope that people understand that, you know, just because, you know, they're Sonny or they're Park or whoever it is, it doesn't just wholly exclusively define who we are. As much as they are our heroes and they represent us, you know, we're more than that. You know, of course, this kind of sounds crazy because I was just bigging up Park Ji-sung for the whole hour, but I want people to understand that, you know, they are that important to us because they represent us. But I hope they don't just sort of exclude us in that box as the Park, or, you know, or as the Sonny. You know what I mean? We are much more than that, and I hope people understand that.
No, 100%, man. And I think Son deserves a shout out for that, because I think Son and Kim Min Jae as well. And there's numerous others that have transcended the stereotypes for an Asian player, right? As much as we love Park, I think Ji-sung Park, he had a lot of those stereotypical characteristics, but he meant a lot more. But like Sonny, he's just a phenomenon. Like he has those characteristics, but he's also a gunman. And like, people call him Sonaldo for a reason. Right, like it's not just a name trick. It's because he's a baller. And Kim Min Jae as well, one of the best centre backs in the world. I don't know how many times we could say an Asian player was in that kind of echelon. Like,
dominant.
These guys are transcending football and stereotypes and all of these things, the racism, like you said, John. And it's important, man. It's a huge deal. And on that heavy point, we're gonna end the interview here, man. But yeah, thanks so much, John, for coming on. I think, you know, in your way as well, you're inspiring a lot of people to get in this football fan space. And when me and Jonty were talking about doing this podcast, we were like, boy, it would be great for us to look somewhere and find a bunch of people that look like us that were doing something, so we can kind of, you know, be inspired. And you're one of those few people, man. So yeah, big ups, and thanks a lot for joining us for this interview, man. We really, really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, mate.